Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
Hello and welcome to our Netball World Cup 2023 coverage.
This episode is a recording of a live podcast from Thursday, 3rd of August, featuring former Australian Diamonds coach Lisa Alexander, England Men's and Mixed Netball Association President Ryan Allan, and Managing Director of the Netball Super League, Claire Nelson.
In this conversation, we focus on the top 5 nations at the Netball World Cup and the pool games between South Africa and New Zealand, England and Australia, and Jamaica and New Zealand. We then cover a few key talking points around injury replacement players, the tournament format, as well as standout performances from players and teams. Finally, we then take a look ahead to the semi-finals.
Apologies at the end of this recording, it does cut off rather abruptly due to a Wi-Fi issue, but here is the full conversation and we hope you enjoy it. So, Luce, the Netball World Cup is here, and as you know, I simply could not be more excited.
Oh, mate, tell me about it. It's the biggest event of the netball calendar, and what better way to show your support for the Roses than by heading to lovellnetball.co.uk and picking yourself up some of the Roses fanwear.
Oh, of course. And I actually have this, this is a bit embarrassing, but I have this weird superstition that when I watch England play, I have to be wearing some kind of kit, like a top or a hoodie or something. Otherwise, I convince myself that if they don't win, it was all my fault.
Oh my God, that is literally insane. But at least you and our listeners can get 15% off at lovellnetball.co.uk with the code NETPOD15 until the end of August.
Amazing. Happy shopping, guys.
Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our second live podcast of the Netball World Cup 2023. We are recording this live from Cape Town on Thursday the 3rd of August at lunchtime, and we are almost at the end of the preliminaries stage 2, and we'll be going on to playoffs and placings tomorrow. So before we introduce our star-studded panel and dive into some questions, Luce, what are your key takeaways of the competition so far?
I mean, I think everyone who was saying this is going to be the closest Netball World Cup that there's ever been has been proved historically correct.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yesterday's game, the draw, I mean, it was just sensational. You know, the crowd here in South Africa, we've mentioned it so many times before on the pod, but it really is like nothing I've ever experienced before. They are absolutely mental and it's amazing. And today's games this morning, I mean, we knew they were going to be good, but really they were exceptional. But across the board, I think the standard of netball has been outstanding. I think that, you know, it's really just been such a spectacle to behold, to watch these athletes get out there on court, and I am just loving every second.
As am I. It really has been something special. So just a few housekeeping bits before we get into it with our panel. We're just having a couple of issues getting Claire on as a speaker, so hopefully we'll get that sorted ASAP. As we mentioned, this space is being recorded for any netball fans who aren't able to listen live, and it will be released as a bonus episode just after the World Cup, along with the other 2 live pods that we're hosting. If you want to send in some questions or comments, please do tweet us at Qtr Time Pod. You could also use the hashtag NWC2023, so we'll be monitoring that. So yeah, do share your thoughts, questions, comments, musings, unpopular opinions. We absolutely love them, and we'll try and shout out as many as possible. So as always, the athletes and the coaches that we're talking about are real people who have real feelings and may also listen to this live or on playback. So please do bear that in mind of any comments or thoughts that you may send in. And as always, as I know you always are, please be respectful at all times. So now to introduce our amazing guest, we are thrilled to welcome former Australian Diamonds head coach Lisa Alexander, Managing Director of the Netball Super League Claire Nelson, and President of the England Men's and Mixed Netball Association Ryan Allan. Welcome everyone. Claire, how are you doing first?
I'm amazing. Like, how good have the last 2 days of the Netball World Cup been? I think everyone is on a netty high right now. So yeah, delighted to be joining you today.
Absolutely. And Lisa, how are you going?
I'm doing well here in Australia. It's 10 o'clock at night and it's been a big evening for me, as well as obviously a really big morning for you guys over there.
Absolute trooper. Thank you for staying up late to chat to us. And Ryan, obviously you're here in Cape Town with us. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Really grateful to have been at both games this morning. What an incredible atmosphere! Two fantastic games. And the World Cup's been so entertaining so far. So yeah, it's like someone said at the earlier time, we're so full of netball at the moment. So it's just so good.
Yeah, just hook it into my veins, right? It's great. So in today's conversation, we're going to discuss the top 5 nations in particular and the incredible games that we had last night and this morning. We're going to try and cover a few key talking points around injury replacement players, tournament format, as well as some standout performances from players and teams overall. And then we're going to turn our attention to the upcoming semi-finals. So firstly, to kick us off, before we get stuck into the top 5, Claire, what have you made of the Netball World Cup so far, watching from home? Oh, Claire, you're on mute. I feel like I'm on Zoom.
No, sorry, you just completely, my Wi-Fi dropped out. So yeah, whatever you asked, could you do that again? I know, wonders of technology, and it's all dialing in from across the globe.
It was just a general question of what you've made of the Netball World Cup so far, watching from home.
Yeah, so, you know, from performance-wise, the last couple of days have been exceptional. This is what we all live for, is that we have uncertainty of outcome. We have to-the-wire games that actually what happens is unpredictable. So seeing more of that, and even, you know, some of the less, the results around Singapore coming out and doing great performances. This is what we want to see, great competition. I think for me, I've been disappointed to see some empty seats around it, if I'm going to be honest. You know, this is a real opportunity to engage communities and get fans around our game. So it would have been nice to have seen more bums on seats, but actually.
Oh, I think we might have just lost you there, Claire. Not sure if that's just me, but we've just lost your audio, so hopefully you'll be back on in a second. But I mean, I agree, Reva Seaton. It's a real shame. There have been a lot of empty seats, particularly in the second arena. The first arena's not been quite as bad, particularly the South Africa games. They have all been sold out. But it would be great to have so many more bums on seats. I think, are you back now, Claire?
Well, I hope so. I think it's my Wi-Fi. I'm doing this from my car. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're back.
Honestly, the life of the Netball Super League MD means that I'm all over the place and doing these things from my car at the moment. So apologies about that. But yeah, you know, it's disappointing because I think this is the first time we've taken the World Cup to the African continent. We have seen and we know that the African nations, their fans, they come with song and voice and they just create an amazing atmosphere. But also when we go back to 2017 and the World Youth Champs being held in Botswana, what they did really well was engage young people, schools and new communities. And I think, you know, obviously we want to make this a really powerful commercial proposition, sell tickets, get bums on seats, but this is also a way to inspire and engage new generations of fans around our sport. And I just think there's missed opportunities for all of us.
Oh, I think we've lost you again, Claire. Oh, how unfortunate. Oh, you back?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
No worries at all.
I was given a whole speech around inspiring the next generation as well there. I don't know what you call of that, but that for me is, you know, where we've got big stadiums, we want to make sure we sell those tickets, but there's always space for us to bring in young people and use this as an opportunity to really engage new fans and audiences. And that's what any event.
Yeah. Oh, we've lost you again, Claire. But no, I completely agree. That's what this is all about. And from what we've heard, that there is an initiative going on now where they are reaching out to local schools and universities and offering them either free or heavily subsidised tickets to those games that are slightly more empty, which is great to see. And I will say, particularly for the African nations, although they do have a small fan base here for some of them, boy, they make the arena seem like it is full, and it is absolutely incredible. So Lisa, I'll come to you next. One of the other things that we particularly love about the World Cup is being able to see loads of new players from nations that we don't get to watch as often perform on the world stage, and so many new players who potentially could be coming over to Super League or to ANZ, SSN. So a question that we had from Becky on Instagram for you: who do you think, based on World Cup performances, that Tracy Neville, who of course has been announced as the new head coach of the 8th Super League franchise, SSN franchise, who do you think she'll want to snap up?
Well, I think after today's game, definitely Fran Williams. We'll be getting an invite somewhere. It's funny, I was just texting with a friend who's in London saying the same thing, that, and by the way, hello to all our listeners and through the Twitter sphere in London. I know there's a few of you who do follow me on Twitter, etc. So I'm saying hello to you now. But yeah, I think someone like Fran she's just impressed me, even the years when I was over there with London Pulse, and she's such a sticky defender. And I think she's definitely going to get an invite. Defenders are hard to come by in international level at that really top level. And if you haven't worked with them in the background, it is hard as well. But I think Fran's now got the creds on the board to definitely be targeted by, whether it's Tracy or even other Super Netball franchises, definitely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think the other great thing about Fran is that the leadership that she shows within whatever squad that she's in. Like, she is such a character. She really has great leadership qualities. She's so articulate. Her communication is amazing. So yeah, I think she'd be a fantastic pickup for any side. And Ryan, you've obviously spent the first week of the competition watching from home. You're now here in Cape Town. How has it been for you?
Yeah, really good. Look, I think the coverage last week has been fantastic. Obviously, now that it's on the BBC and all the games have been shown, it's really accessible for everyone. So even last week where I couldn't fully focus on the game, I still had it on in the background. Obviously, a lot of the games are during work time, which makes it a bit of a challenge. But I think the coverage has been quite good. And obviously, coming into this second week with every game available, whether it's on BBC, on their red button, or on the YouTube channel, making that really accessible is so important. And I've been encouraging everyone to sort of, even if they're at work, just to sort of log on, even have it in the background to listen to it that way, just to get those stats up. And yeah, to arrive here yesterday, and then to come to the games today, it's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Everyone just get every single device that you have, get the Netty on, and it'll all help boost our ratings. So before we get stuck into discussing some of the key matches, just a reminder, you can get in touch with us on the hashtag NWC2023, and we'll read out as many as we can. The lovely Lucy next to me is going to be monitoring that, aren't you, Luce?
Yep, I am indeed. I'm doing a few tweets as you speak, live tweeting.
So let's get stuck in then to discussing some of the key matches over the last 24 hours. It blows my mind it's just 24 hours. It feels like it's gone on for so much longer, but we've had some incredible performances. So we're going to start with the draw between South Africa and New Zealand. South Africa handed New Zealand 2 consecutive quarter losses in the second half, which was their only 2 quarter losses of the tournament and their lowest quarter score of the competition up until their game with Jamaica today. They scored just 10 in that final quarter. So Lisa, I'll come to you first. As someone who's coached against New Zealand for many years in those kind of critical matches, what did you make of the way that Norma pulled her side through in this game?
Yeah, I think the South Africans really played with no fear, and I think the younger players really stood up. Nicole Gillard was just sensational, and I think the new young wing defence there as well was just fantastic out there. But you couldn't go past Pumza Mawani's intercept right there in the critical moment. I think I listened to an interview with her after the game, and her eyes lit up when she said, "I just had to go for that ball." And there's been many occasions when she's been for that same ball, and I can remember coaching against her, and, we would say, you'll have to fake and feed. And unfortunately, New Zealand were just putting that ball up to the South African defenders, and to their credit, they just snaffled everything, and they just kept believing in themselves. And I think the crowd really, helped them to grow some extra legs in that last part of that quarter, and they just went ahead with it and showed that belief.
Yeah, it was truly something to behold. Like, being there in person was such a privilege. I've never quite seen anything like it. And, if we look at the last time these sides met back in January in the Quad Series, the result between New Zealand and South Africa was totally different. New Zealand beat South Africa by 20 goals. So, Claire, what do you think has been the catalyst for such a turnaround for South Africa?
I mean, you cannot underestimate the power of a home crowd, home soil. This means everything. And that's the thing with world events, is you can be crumbled by the moment or you can rise to it. And these guys rose to it. They're here to prove people wrong. They're here to fight for a medal on home soil. There's a lot riding on this. So, that with Norma coming back in and actually just that grit and belief, it absolutely delivered one of the most magical moments of the tournament so far. It was so emotional. It was so exciting. And I tell you, I know that they've got a big job to do against Uganda today, but it's blown everything wide open.
Yeah, it really has. We're just trying to find out exactly what margin they need to beat Uganda.
I think it's 20. I think it's about 20 odd, I've heard. So it's got to be a good, convincing win. I don't know if that's right, but that's what we were talking about this morning when we were trying to do the maths.
Interesting. We're going to try and bring you confirmation of that. Lucy's just beavering away, looking that up for us. But yeah, it has blown things open. I think it is possibly still a bit unlikely, and Uganda aren't going to be lying down for this game. Like, they're going to be up for it as well, and we saw a fantastic finish from them in Commonwealth Games. So anything really could happen. And Ryan, you were in the arena for this game. What was your experience like as a fan here, and what did you make of the performance from South Africa?
I wasn't there. I was on my way. So I know I didn't make the game. We only arrived yesterday, but actually, we checked into the Airbnb we were staying in. I was watching the game, and I was like, oh, okay, South Africa playing well, but I think there was about down by about 5. So I was like, oh, we'll jump in the Uber, because the plan was to head down to go in and to see the Barbados game, following it to see the Corbin sisters. And we got in the cab and put it on our phones and just couldn't believe it. And even the taxi driver, even the Uber driver was getting into it. He knew it was on, wanting to know what was happening, because we had it on the phone. So, we had the excitement of a South African Uber driver, and we sort of basically had to commentate it for him as to what was happening. And I really thought which was crazy. I really thought the young people have stood up and played with no fear for South Africa. Obviously, they had the replacement with Qtr, and then so they started with Inna Marie, and then she came up, and then I just thought the young attacking end has just really stood up and played with no fear. And sometimes, that inexperience sometimes is such a strength, where you can sort of play in no fear. And to take that last shot on the buzzer from that distance, it didn't even look like it was going to miss. I think she thought as soon as she got the ball, it was going in. And then to see the whole place erupt, and yes, albeit on my iPhone, just unbelievable. And then sort of the atmosphere outside the venue after that game was incredible.
Yeah, and the shooting end is probably what impressed me the most. Yes, Pumza Mawene was absolutely outstanding. I don't think you could look past her, and actually I think she's a little bit hard done by not to get a player of the match. But the shooting end with Vandenberg and Talliard, I was just absolutely blown away for such a young shooting circle to be able to stand up like that. Lisa, from a coaching perspective, what do you think of the young shooting circle that South Africa put out there, and how they stood up against really tough opposition?
Well, I think what Norma Plummer did very, very well was to give them that confidence and give them some very basic coaching tips around the preparation for that game. They kept it simple, and I think both players just seemed to be able to keep pushing on, even with that great Kiwi zone defence around them. So, of course, Nicole Cusack and Norma Plummer are used to coaching against the New Zealand style of defence. So they've got all of the tricks up the sleeve around screening off some of those defenders and opening up space and continuing to keep moving and cutting, having their mid-court cutting through to the top of the circle and things like that. So I think they kept it fairly basic. They'd obviously practiced in training how they were going to approach this game. And I think they just, as Ryan said, they just played with no fear and they just kept on motoring on and believing in their system and their game plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do hope that we see both Talliard and Vandenberg picked up in Super League or ANZ or even SSN next year, because they're just so good. We'd absolutely love to have them in our competitions. So we're going to move on now to look at the incredible clash between Australia and England, with England taking the win 56-55. England actually won 3 quarters in this game, including taking the third quarter 18-13. So, Lisa, sticking with you as our resident Aussie, where were Australia beaten today?
I think they were beaten in the scrappier moments. I think England just seemed to play the random chaos moments in the game far better than Australia did. And that's what I would say is unfortunate around Australia's preparation, because they haven't had a lot of time together as a team of 12 and their squad of 15 since coming off Super Netball, Suncorp Super Netball finals. They haven't had that real, I guess, messy time in training where they get to figure out what they're going to do if things go chaotic, like they do against the English in certain areas of the game. And I think particularly with all the changes that Jess Thirlby put out there, it really unsettled the Australians. It actually made them feel very uncomfortable. It took away their ball speed. They had to fight and scrap for lots of ball. I noticed that their coach talked about the aggression of the English players, and you could certainly see that out there. And I thought Helen Housby's defensive capabilities as a goal attack really stood out to me. It was like having an eighth. It was like them having an 8th player out there. It truly was. And I don't think Australia at the moment is matching that in the same way. And if we made a mistake, it looked like we dropped our heads instead of getting on with the next issue, and perhaps having almost a little whinge about it as well. So those sort of bad habits are going to have to be taken out of Australia's mindset, definitely, for the semi-finals. They just have to get on with it. They have to learn to scrap a bit harder. They have to learn to fight. They have to learn to be in front, and they have to learn to win the loose ball gets. And I think England today can be congratulated for how they fought back. They showed belief. They showed belief in their squad of 12. And I thought the changes that were made by the coaching staff were sensational.
Yeah, and I think historically Jess Selby's been criticised by a lot of people for some of the changes that she's made in different games. But I think defensively, particularly that last, I think it was the third and fourth quarter defensive combination that we had of Fran and Fumi, it's not one that I personally myself would have put out, or if I did, I probably would have swapped it round to have Fumi in goal defence. But it really, really worked. And I think it's quite easy to say, it's either a stroke of genius or it's the worst idea ever, and this time it was a stroke of genius. And I think you can't look past the fact. Yeah, go on, Lisa.
Absolutely. I think what I was going to say is I think what it did is it gave Australia something to have to think about. We don't have a really tall post-up shooter. We've got Sophie Garben, but we don't have a Danelle Wallum in our team of 12. We don't have a Caitlin Bassett from the past. So, it is a moving circle. So I think the type of defensive players and combinations that England put out against us were really terrific matchups against the style of play of the Australians. And like I said, they snuffed out all of their space to work in. Australians have been used to being able to progress the ball down very cleanly without a lot of, contesting from an opposition. And England made every pass hard. And that is something that the Australians just weren't not used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you also can't look past the fact that Fran and Fumi some of the only members of that squad who don't have experience playing overseas. They are pure homegrown talents. So, and I think that's testament potentially to how much the Super League has improved over the years, our domestic competition. So, Claire, would you agree with that? Do you think that their performances speaks to the development of the Super League over the last sort of 4 or 5 years or so?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got strong clubs and it's a strong domestic competition, but does it need to improve so that we can make sure that we're developing all our international athletes to perform on the world stage? Absolutely. And that's part of my role and where I'm at now. But, you listened to Tamsin yesterday, without the Super League, without the feeder competitions, the majority of our athletes are not getting the exposure to the competition level, the training program, the different styles. And so it's absolutely critical to preparing for the world stage, because the reality is the majority, again, of nations that are competing here can't afford to play regular international competition. So the Super League, as is SSN ANZ, it's absolutely fueling the best of the best. And we need to make sure that we are constantly driving those standards up and that we have the pathway underneath it so that we've got talent across the board that know how to compete and perform on the world stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, Claire was actually referencing an interview that we did with Tamsin Greenway and Emily Nicol yesterday, which is on our Instagram page. So it's sort of 14 minutes or so. It's a really, really interesting, fascinating interview. So if you want to catch up on everything that Tamsin said, do head over and have a little look. But another sort of key talking point from this game for us was around the mid-court. We saw the impact of Jade Clark, who I think brought a sense of calm and composure to England, as well as showing her ability to win ball as well. So we've got a question from one of our listeners, from Charlotte. So Ryan, we're coming to you for this one. With all the talk about the mid-court selection for England, who do you think is our starting centre for our next game against New Zealand? Is it Clark? Is it Allison? Malcolm? Who do you think?
That's a really difficult question. I think so. Prior to the game and prior to Jade coming on, I'd actually had Imogen down. I think Imo's had a phenomenal World Cup so far. I think she's been brilliant. I had her mum was actually sat in front of me today during the game, and she was just riding every moment in that game as well. So yeah, like I said, before this game, I would have started Imogen, which they did today. But then the impact that Jade had when she came on was incredible. It really did sort of change the momentum at the right time. I think this game was one of momentum. I think England sort of started the stronger of the two in the first quarter, and you felt like the momentum was then. Australia in general, this tournament has sort of started a few of the games a little bit slow, but then the second quarter came in, and I was sat there thinking, okay, I get to talk about the normal Australians start picking up their ball speed. I think they won second quarter by 8, I believe. And I was like, oh, okay, that's going to be pretty tough now to shift that momentum. And then Jess made those changes at half time, bringing Fumi back to goalkeeper. And I think it sort of freed up everyone in the middle to sort of work and scrap a bit more. I think it allowed Fran to sort of be a bit more disruptive in front of her. I think Fumi got most of her penalty calls in the first half when she wasn't in keeper. I think she got a lot less once she was pushed back to goalkeeper. But then when Jade came on, it really was, I think she got an intercept, her feeds, I think she started getting a goal assist, really went through the roof. So now for me, look, I don't want to sit on the fence. Who would I start? We don't know who it's going to be, but I'm assuming it's going to be New Zealand. I probably would do a similar thing again. If I was, told me to make a decision, I'd start with Imogen, Allison, and potentially bring Jade Clark on just to have that huge impact at some point in the game.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I agree with Ryan. Well done.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, there you go, Ryan.
I'll take that.
Put that on your CV. I mean, the other sort of mid-court question for me, or not really a question, but more of a comment, the amazing impact that we saw from Chelsea Pittman when she came on in the third quarter. I thought she was absolutely outstanding. I think she's having the competition of her life. And she had a question on this from Carney. So Lisa, I'll come to you for this. They said, would England's changes have worked as effectively, or would England's performance have been as effective if Chelsea came on earlier in the game, or did her late arrival have more of an impact?
Look, we can always be smarter in hindsight, but I think what it did is it really made that last part of the game much more settled, and the feeding was much more expert and top end. What I was going to say, and Ryan, alluded to it before, is Imogen Allison's really improved, I think, as a centre. There's just a slight question mark for me over some of her feeding. Is it quite top end enough to really, put that absolute bullet through or get that real accuracy on a high ball? You can be rest assured that Chelsea will do that. She will do it as an impact player, and I think the way that she was used in this game was perfect. If you could repeat that again, you would. But it might be that in the next game it needs to be at a different time. So I think, as coaches, we can get locked into predetermined changes, but I think you've got to read what's happening in the game and figure out, well, when's the best time to bring her on. But I think Jess did this really well. Chelsea made a big difference. She got ball through to those shooters a lot more quickly. The defenders' heads were twisting and turning everywhere. And, Helen and Ali were well on top when they had the great experience feeding of Jade Clark and Chelsea Pittman.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, although the change was made to take Nat Metcalf off and bring Chelsea on, I do think that Chelsea matches up a lot better against someone like an Ash Braz. I think the way that she uses her body is really, really smart. And I think it's better suited to a style like Ash Braz plays. But credit to Nat, she put in a really high work rate, potentially wore Ash Braz down a little bit for Chelsea to come on and have such an impact. I just think it was an absolute masterstroke to bring Chelsea on. And I think just a little bit conscious of time. So before we move ahead to semi-finals predictions, we're going to discuss the Jamaica-New Zealand game. Jamaica took a 59-48 win, even managed to empty their bench for the final few minutes of this game. Knowles only made 2 changes, and both of these changes came over halfway through the final quarter. We saw Kelly Jury play the full game at wing defence, and Crampton didn't take to court at all in this game. Ryan, coming to you, what's your view on this particular mid-court combination from Knowles?
Yeah, I was sat next to. Seems like I was sitting next to everyone. I was sat next to a couple of Kiwi fans during this, and they were quite surprised with the lack of changes, and the changes that did come were quite late. And the question was Knowles looking to the next game. Like, I know they would never plan to lose. They would have gone 100% in to try and win this game to make sure that they were through to the semi-finals. But does she have one eye on that next game? Was she resting? Because I thought the rotations were I thought she would have rotated a lot more. They had a big game yesterday as well, which would have been exhausting, not just physically, but mentally, especially with that South African crowd behind the South African team. And from my end on, look, it did feel like New Zealand were quite flat today. There was just a little bit of lacking a bit of energy compared to, how the Jamaicans were playing. And it just seemed a slight bit sluggish. So I was surprised there wasn't a refresh of the legs or any changes a little bit sooner. But, who am I to question Dame Noeline on her decisions?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Who are we to question Dame Knowles, and Knowles we trust? Just a reminder for everyone listening as well, if you want to get in touch, you can use the hashtag NWC2023. Do share your thoughts and comments on what our lovely panel is saying. We did see an interesting tweet from Kelly Walker, who I think is listening. Hey, Kelly, how you doing? And she said that she thinks it's time New Zealand allowed their players to play outside of the ANZ without needing special dispensation. Lisa, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this would help them when it comes to playing teams like Jamaica, who they don't get to face very often?
Oh, it's a vexed question, that one. As an Australian coach, I didn't particularly love all the nations getting all our intel and learning about our high-performance systems, I can tell you. But you also do learn about them as well. And it is true that the mystery goes. That's why I was actually a little bit worried for Australia facing New Zealand, because I thought, we haven't had a lot of time on them, and they've had 6 weeks of, preparation beforehand. And this is obviously before Grace Nowicki was injured. So, yeah, I mean, New Zealand are up against a hard, between a rock and a hard place at the moment. I think with Grace Nowicki going out of contention might have changed Noel's mind about who she played today in goals, and she may have wanted to just really, hone in on that combination. But to answer your question, look, I would prefer if all of our domestic leagues allowed, more player movement, and that would mean certain New Zealand players, a bit like, Laura Langman got that dispensation to go to Australia to, once she, put her time into New Zealand, that she got that time to come over to Australia and perform as she did. And she really drove, I have to tell you, drove us, New Zealand, to a World Cup victory in 2019 off the back of, from some fantastic seasons with Sunshine Coast Lightning. So short answer is I would prefer, yes, that they gave some players exposure, because I think it will do more for their games than less. But I do understand what they're trying to achieve as well, which is to try and really hone in on their Kiwi style and keep their players close to the system that they're trying to develop.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, Claire, what are your thoughts on this? Because we know that SSN obviously doesn't have an import limitation. We know that the ANZ doesn't allow Kiwi players to play outside without special dispensation. We know that NSL has a 2 import rule. So there's all sort of different variations with each competition. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's actually something we're working through now as we're looking at future models for the Super League and where we need to take our sport, how we strengthen it, and how we create the best level of competition on the court and the best environment. And as I said, the domestic leagues are critical for the commercial growth of the sport, but also for preparing our athletes to perform on the world stage. For me, I really think your domestic leagues need to be fueling and firing your domestic pathway. So you want your top talent in there, and you want to make sure that it's the place where you can build and nurture and really, grow your homegrown talent. But actually bringing in overseas import athletes is just so magical. When we see some of the talent that we have in our league at the moment, where Shamira Sterling started in the Super League, you're exposed to different styles. It's just, that for me is what performance sport looks like at a league level. So, for me, I want to make sure that we get, when we're thinking about the future, that we're getting all of this right, so that we are creating the best place for our Roses and our UK athletes to perform, but that we are making it a place where we're attracting the best of the best from across the world.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It is a fine balance, really, between making sure that we're still able to nurture and bring up the young English talent as well, or UK talent, and then also wanting to make sure that we're able to really rival the likes of SSN in terms of being competitive. I mean, Ryan, I'll come to you on a question about Jamaica. With the games that they've had so far, this game against New Zealand today, is this their time to win gold?
I think it's the best opportunity that they've got. I'm assuming we're going to move into our semi-final predictions and where we're going to see it through. I can see Jamaica making it through to the final at this stage. Unfortunately, at the expense of Australia on this case. I think they're playing with such confidence. Today, being there to actually witness it, they were letting the ball go. Like I felt like New Zealand, you asked me about their mid-court before, they weren't giving those second balls. They were sort of holding onto the ball too long and then resetting. Whereas I think Jamaica were playing with a lot more freedom. They're playing with confidence. I think they look like they walked on the court like they were going to win the game. I think in their heads they were winning, and I think that confidence, I think it's moved from a bit of Jamaican flair and some might say arrogance arrogance to actual confidence. They believe, they've got this belief within that squad that they can go on to win gold. So I do think it's highly possible that they may walk away with the gold this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, I've put my money on them taking gold. A question from Aaron that's come in on Twitter. Hey Aaron, thanks for sending in. Lisa, with the form that Jamaica are in, do you think that Australia will beat them in the semi, or will this be the first time that Australia won't feature at a Netball World Cup final?
This is the semi-final that Australia probably were not anticipating at this stage. I mean, they, obviously would go through the scenarios and think, yes, if we don't beat England, well, this will happen. So they weren't, definitely lay down misères to beat England, but they would have been planning on winning this and then playing the lesser team in the other draw. So this is an enormous challenge for Australia. They have had a loss now, so they are and have shown, and this team has shown that they've got the capability of coming back after a loss and, being able to address the areas that they need to address. But they're up. This is the mighty Jamaica. This truly is. I watched them tonight, and I just thought everything Rob Wright's been talking to me about with this team is starting to come to fruition. They're so much more disciplined now. Their whole team is supporting each other. You don't see those brain snap passes coming off, or if they do one, then they worked really hard to get it back. They've got that Aussie grit determination, particularly around the players that have been, had their time in Suncorp Super Netball. And there's that polish that they have. Those players have got that confidence and that polish. And so, look, I fear, and I don't want to think about it because I am one that's a person that's very positive, and I think of Australia will come back and fight hard. But this is going to be an enormous challenge for them. This is truly a Mount Everest to climb, and it's going to take all 12 athletes and the coaching staff to overcome Jamaica. And I think it's going to be one of the hardest ones that Australia will ever have to climb. They can do it if they're playing at their absolute best, but I really think Jamaica will win this semi-final. And the very horrible thought of Australia not being in a gold medal game is going to have to be a bitter taste in our mouths.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to jump in, Lisa, as I know I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think it's going to be a very tough ask for Australia. However, last year, Jamaica defeated Australia in the pool stages 55-57 and then lost 51-55 in the gold medal match. And also for England fans, England defeated New Zealand by 10 goals, 44-54 in the pool stages, and then lost 55-48. So we could see a complete turnaround from the results from today's games going into the semi-final. Obviously, we've got those different oppositions, but you just never know. It's so up in the air, and I think it's just testament to how close it is in international netball at the moment.
Yeah. I
guess our only saving grace, I think, is the fact that Sophie Garben didn't take the court at all today. I'm not certain why, and I know there'll be a lot of question marks around that from our Australian netball press. But that might have been part of the plan to not play her and have her ready to play Jamaica. Who knows? But that could be our secret weapon.
Yeah, I mean, there were some questions in the press conference afterwards around changes that were or weren't made for Australia. And, you mentioned Donnell Wallam earlier, Lisa. I do have to wonder, with the absence of Boetta, who is such a dynamic and exciting player and really brings that spark, I think Donnell has elements of that, and she could have been the spark that was needed in that game to take them over the line. Do you think that she should have made the main squad of 12?
Oh, look, it's a really hard one. I thought she should because of that X factor and that ability to bring something in that's very, very different. I'm not certain that Sophie Garben's that different to what is already there. I know she doesn't move as well, as much as Cara Conan, and she can play that post up. She hasn't got the height and the size that a Donnell Wallam has got. So it is It is a bit all same, and that's the problem that Australia has. It's a bit same, and there's no real X factor there. And I think all the journos and netball, aficionados over here in Australia are saying the same things.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. It's just something about Donnell. She does have that spark about her and is a really exciting player. So looking ahead to the semi-finals then, it's worth noting that Australia and New Zealand have never lost a Netball World Cup semi-final. So they're going into that with sort of that on their shoulders and all the history behind them. And, that may even impact their performance to an extent. We're going to start off looking, because we've already done a bit of Jamaica, Australia, looking at New Zealand, who will play England. Claire, coming to you, New Zealand will be going into this on the back of 2 tough games, 1 loss and 1 draw. How do you think England will fare? Because they're no doubt New Zealand are going to be absolutely fired up for this.
Yeah, look, I've always said when I'm interviewed, don't ask me coaching questions, because I'm the type of person that I'm like, right now, for me, this is about a moment and mindset. And like you say, how you're going into the semi-final is absolutely key. So are you coming off the back of a win, good combinations, good results? I mean, as Jess said in her interview today, that they came from behind at times, they ground forward. That's a really great test going into these critical games. So, but as you also showed from Con Games, is that, a win in the pools does not mean you're going to go and win at semi-finals. But that's what makes it exciting. That's what fans want to see, that's what audience want to see, and it just makes a moment. And as I keep saying, you've got to rise to it. In terms of what people do now in terms of coaching and tactics, that I'll leave to Queen Lisa to come and explain how we do it. But for me, and it's beautiful because I've been riding my Thistles journey, still supporting them, but now I'm in the England camp as well. And what an incredible moment that was for us here this morning. So it's all there to play for. And honestly, I couldn't predict who's going to win, but I think certainly momentum and mindset are going to play a huge piece in getting results over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan, you obviously know a lot of the England girls very well, having helped train with them with EMMNA.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are going to be the key matchups on which area of the court between England and New Zealand?
First of all, I'm going to say I think England are going to win the semi-final. I think England learnt a lot about themselves today. I think Claire mentioned it. They did come from behind. They pretty much were able to overcome every obstacle. They sort of scrapped when they needed to scrap. They were structured when they needed to structure. And look, going into before the World Cup, obviously the Thorns spent time with them. The England men's team spent time with them, and we just got the sense that the camaraderie and the team bond was there with England. And I think there was a sense of confidence. I think they did know they had a lot to work to do, and obviously you'd have to be on top of your game in order to beat any of the top 5 countries in the world. But I think today's game was the best preparation for them leading into the semi-final. And like Claire said, the momentum is there. I don't think today's game could have gone better for them from a mental standpoint. And I think they'll walk into Saturday's game feeling, relatively confident, wary of New Zealand. Obviously, it is the Silver Ferns, the current world champions. But as far as matchups go, I think the English shoot again will be really tough. I know the New Zealand defensive end is one of the best in the world. I thought they both played relatively well today. But I just think Elle Cardwell and Helen, off the back of both, one winning the Suncorp final, the other one coming just short, but now playing so well together. I think the attacking end will be fine. I think that midcourt, I think Lisa said it, I think how that's managed during the semi-final will be key as to overcoming the New Zealand midcourt. And then, again, the defence, I think, Fran Williams has been playing well. Jiva didn't get as many minutes today because of the combination of Fumi and Fran. And I think Jiva will play in that semi-final and bring that experience, and then they'll be able to do that switch again. So I guess what I'm saying, even though it's the Ferns, I think England might actually pit them from in defence, mid, and attack at this point in time, based on the performances in this tournament and what I saw today from New Zealand.
I mean, the prospect of New Zealand and Australia neither making a Netball World Cup, and England, I actually said it before the tournament started, I said an England-Jamaica
I
final.
don't want you to talk about this too much because I'm worried that it's going to jinx it. I'm very superstitious. I'm going to wear the same outfit that I wore today for the semi-final. I'm not taking any chances.
I see it more as willing it to
mean,
happen as opposed to jinxing it. You're willing this to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
An England
exactly.
Jamaica final, which I think is also great for netball globally to have two countries that aren't, it haven't been into a world. Well, England obviously has, but into the World Cup finals, two new teams. They've been saying for years this changing of the guard. I don't think it's changing of the guard as such. It's just more teams being within the possibility of actually taking the win. And how great was it walking into this tournament and not knowing, who of the top 5 nations, including South Africa with their home crowd, we're going to make these semi-finals. So yeah, it's really exciting, and it's made this World Cup, like we said at the beginning of the pod, the closest so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a key thing for me for this game is what defensive lineup New Zealand are going to come out with. We obviously saw, as we mentioned earlier, Kelly Jury spend the whole game in wing defence today, which I was quite surprised at. I actually thought, with my non-coaching experience, that I would have had Kelly Jury in goalkeeper and then Jane Watson out in goal defence with Berger out in wing defence. Lisa, what defensive lineup do you think New Zealand will come out with tomorrow for England? Or for the semis,
Saturday.
not tomorrow, Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I still like Watson and Berger, but I also, I don't mind the other one as well, where you've got Jury, Watson, and Berger out on wing defence. I think Jury's, it was an interesting experiment, and I've been watching it carefully because the wing defence position is so pivotal to all the teams. I thought Laura Malcolm did a very good job today in her position. She ground down Liz Watson. So, for me, I think it's going to be a matter of which combination clicks best. And really what I thought today when I was watching New Zealand, they weren't as connected as they usually are. So it's going to be which combination is going to be the most connected as a unit coming up against England, because they will have to play really together to get on top of what is a world-class combination in Helen and Ali. And, it makes my Australian little heart break a little bit, because if we're talking about a Jamaica-England final, a lot of those players in both teams have had experience on the Suncorp Super Netball court. So, I didn't want to say I told you so back about, I think, 6 years ago, but I did say that the danger of having unlimited imports into our competition may, bring this benefit. Look, on a global level, it is fantastic. And I think everyone agrees that we need to have other teams winning other than Australia. But as an Australian, it's a very hard pill to swallow. So having said that, look, I think England can beat New Zealand as well. I think they showed today the heart, the mind and the spirit to play together for each other and to get out there and scrap for their country. And I think it was a masterstroke for the English organisation to bring Jo Harton and also Serena Guthrie out to South Africa to be the mentors to the players. I think they reek of winning history and winning success, and I think they're helping this young group really fly and really believe in each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, like you say, from an Australian perspective, it is a bitter pill to swallow. But I do think that you're right in saying from a global netball perspective, this is good. Like, this is a positive thing. And I actually think it's a necessary thing. We can't just keep having a 2-horse race to in netball, but always between Australia and New Zealand. It is time that something changed. And I think it's wonderful that we're able to experience that now. Just conscious of time, so we're just going to move on slightly to talk a little bit more about injury replacements that we've seen and tournament format before we go on to our medal predictions. So I'm going to put all 3 of you on the spot at the end and ask for your bronze, silver and gold. So you've got a little bit of thinking time. But we know that a new rule for this year's World Cup is that teams are permitted to have 3 travelling reserves who can permanently replace squad members who aren't able to continue for the remainder of the tournament. And this has been utilised by 3 teams so far. Uganda have made 2 replacements due to illness. Lenise Potgieter has been ruled out for South Africa due to injury and replaced by Uwethu Ngabane. And Grace Wecke has also suffered a tournament-ending injury and has been replaced by Tiana Maturo. So, Lisa, I'm sticking with you. You've attended numerous major competitions as head coach of the Aussie Diamonds. Do you think that this rule change does enough to safeguard the integrity of the competition should a player become injured? Or do the demands of such a grueling competition schedule require further measures to be put in place for player welfare?
Oh, definitely. I think there needs to be a good look at the rigorous nature of this competition. Netball requires some of the most intense accelerations and decelerations of any sport in the world. It's still not measured properly, can I tell you? And the sports scientists know that. So the fitness levels are enormous. And the fact that the players, and you're expecting them to play day in, day out with no rest, hardly any rest, is getting to the point where it's, it may be increasing the amount of injuries that we're having. It definitely will cumulatively over time. Thank goodness we haven't had any concussions yet, which is a good thing. Because I, fear that whole process and protocol would be a bit of a mess still, because I still think we're not on top of that from a netball point of view in terms of the health and well-being of the athletes, and that's another, thing that needs to be worked out for next time. But when you look here in Australia, and we've got the Women's World Cup of football happening at the moment, there's so much time in between matches, so there's a real understanding that you're not going to get high performance matches if you don't allow some rest time in between. Now, netball has a difficulty with that because, of course, it costs more. It's going to cost the countries that can't afford it even more. But at the end of the day, I think it's definitely something we need to work towards, whether it's less games, whether the top 8 play each other, the bottom 8 play each other, and we have 2 different pools. However we're going to do it, I think we do need less games over the time to increase the chances of much higher performance, and also to lessen the injury toll that is going to happen to athletes over time. I think having the reserves this time has been a fantastic introduction of this idea, and I would have loved to have had it at 219, I can tell you. So all is good from that point of view, as long as all the countries are given the same opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And when Grace did go down and was ruled out in the post-match press conference, Knowles said, quote unquote, praise be the fact that this rule was in existence. And I think it's the first of several steps that should be made to improve player welfare and loading. But as you say, Lisa, there is that cost element to it. And we know that netball as a whole is on this journey to professionalisation, and we do need to bring in more funding within our sport. So, Claire, before we move on to our finals predictions, just in and around this topic, how do we bring more money into the sport? Because we know that certain teams haven't been able to utilise the 3 travelling reserves because they haven't been able to afford to take them with us. How do we finally kind of bridge that gap with all these companies saying women's sport is amazing to invest in, but yet to actually put cash on the table? How can we get one step closer?
We need a whole new podcast on this. And something,
Yeah,
I've been having those conversations for the last 6 weeks in my new post, and the stats are there, the power of women's sport, netball in the UK, fastest growing, female audiences, we know it. Well, write the checks, people, write the checks. But it takes more than that, because actually I'm sitting here doing the models of how we grow and professionalise our sport, and it comes down to fan power.
that's it. What changes the game is eyeballs and bums on seats. You commercialize and monetize the game through fan power. So we have got to convert ourselves as the fans watching and supporting into the movement that can drive this forward, because then you can't argue against that. I've seen some of the BBC numbers, they're looking really good early on, so this is fantastic that people are showing up for us. But there's more than that, because not everyone's got a domestic league that can fire the sponsors and the broadcast. Again, going back to what Tamsin said yesterday and what I said earlier, the disparity between the nations is huge. And the only way that you can really improve on the world stage without having that domestic league is to play international games. Now, a tour can cost anything between £40,000 and £50,000 to just go and play one team. The reason why we have to compact the World Cup into such a short space of time is because the majority of nations, probably outside of the top five, can't afford to be there with their big teams for any longer. So there is a global piece at work here, that as we grow our game, as we are showing that we are reducing the margins competitive wise, where we've got these incredible role models, how do we monetize that better? And there has to be something that happens at a world level to be able to support nations, to play more, to travel more. And then at a domestic level, we've got to fuel the commercials to make sure that we're creating not only the best product, but the safest environment for our athletes to operate in. So there's loads of work, but we are the time is now. And, watching the Roses win this morning, emotionally, it was fantastic. But for us all sitting here, we're like, brilliant, because this makes our conversations so much easier to sit with brands and go, jump on board, work with us, and let's really propel our sport forward together. So, anyone listening, any brands, write the checks. Stop saying women's sport is nice. We know it. Write the checks and let's make a difference.
Oh, wow, Claire. I mean, we are sat here with like goosebumps on our arms, like, yes, like, it's absolutely
I'm ready to take
amazing.
to the streets, honestly.
Right?
Yeah, I told you, don't ask me about coaching, but if you need me to sell our sport, I can do it. And this is the time. I've seen lots of fans with their little signs, and lots of people saying the time is now. And obviously that means something for their team, whether it's, the Rose is going for gold or Jamaica, it means something for everybody. But actually, as for our sport on a bigger level, the time is now for us to capitalize on where women's sport's going, the fast growth and participation around our sport, the development of the game. And we now need to monetize it and turn that into a product that fires and fuels sustainable growth on and off the court for everybody engaged in netball.
Yeah, 100%. And I love what you said about the role that everyone can play in that. Like, I'm sort of sidetracking now, but I even put it in my team WhatsApp group. I was like, oh, here's the schedule for today, or here's the schedule for the tournament. And now every single one of them is watching. And if I hadn't have done that, maybe only one of them would have watched. But that's now 7, 8, 9, 10 extra eyeballs on. So we all really do have a part to play in this.
This is the job of women, right? This is what we've been talking about this for a long time. And I know we're just short on time here, but we have to work harder than everyone else to fix the system in which we exist. The system is not fit for purpose across everything. We know that. So if we want to fix our own system in sport, we want to get more for netball, then we have to take direct positive action. And I'll be talking a lot about this around Super League season 24. I need people to show up, to click, to watch, to buy the tickets, and to bring their friends along. And if we all do that, we make massive change.
Yeah, well, Claire, I think we're going to have to do a separate podcast episode on this. So I'm going to pick your brain for your diary availability after this. But before we wrap up then, Claire, I'm going to stick with you. We can't not ask you, all three of you, for your medal predictions and whether they've changed at all based on the results of the last couple of days. So, Claire, who is taking gold, silver and bronze?
Roses for gold, and I was hopeful that they would go for gold, and now after today I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. So I think it's going to be Roses, Australia, Jamaica is my prediction.
Interesting. I don't think we've had that line up yet from anyone. Ryan, your prediction?
I'm going to go roses for gold as well, willing it to happen, not jinxing it, willing it. Jamaica for silver, and Australia for bronze. And you asked if that's changed since the start of the tournament. It has. I had Australia for gold, New Zealand for silver, and Jamaica for bronze at the start of the tournament. And so I've completely changed.
Interesting, very interesting. And finally, Lisa, what's your prediction?
My prediction is Claire Nelson for Prime Minister of the
we endorse
UK.
This message.
I have always said that Claire is just the most motivating, wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time Podcast.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Do get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the 2023 Netball World Cup and which players stood out for you.
Finally, we would really, really appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the pod, please let us know and do spread the word with your netball pals so even more people can get involved. Don't forget to take advantage of our exclusive 15% discount with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk, valid until the end of August. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.